Pages of Discovery, A Journey to Read and Learn, English Prologue, Aria Nguyen pressed her fingers against the cool glass of the bookstore window, watching the morning sun dance across rows of neatly shelved volumes. At 22, she had mastered basic conversation in English, ordering coffee, asking for directions, greeting strangers. But every time she tried to tackle a book or newspaper, she felt adrift. Words blurred on the page, and she skipped over paragraphs, hoping to catch the gist, but missing critical details. Today, she vowed, would be different. Armed with determination and a brand new notebook, she would embark on a journey to read and learn English, one page at a time. Chapter 1. Entering the Library of Possibilities. The Brighton Central Library stood like a cathedral of knowledge. Aria inhaled the faint scent of old paper and polished wood as she crossed the threshold. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, illuminating aisles labeled fiction, non-fiction, biographies, and more. She clutched her notebook to her chest, heart fluttering. A kindly librarian named Mr. Lee noticed her hesitation and offered a gentle smile. "Looking for something special?" he asked. Aria confessed her struggle with reading English and her desire to improve. With a nod, Mr. Lee led her to a section of graded readers, books written for learners, organized by difficulty level. He explained how starting at the right level builds confidence, prevents frustration, and lays a strong foundation. That afternoon, Aria checked out 3 books: a beginner's fairy tale, an intermediate travel journal, and a bilingual short story collection. Chapter 2. The First Graded Reader. That evening, Aria settled into her favorite armchair with the beginner's fairy tale in hand. The story was simple: a curious cat on a journey to find its missing bell. Each page contained only a handful of new words, with footnotes explaining definitions and sample sentences. Aria read the first paragraph slowly, underlining unfamiliar terms: proud, mystical, glisten. She looked each up in Saktintapasmos, her pocket dictionary, and wrote them in her notebook, alongside a sentence of her own. The mystical forest glistened with morning dew. When she reached the end of the chapter, she closed the book and recited the key events aloud. Her tongue stumbled at first, but with each repetition, the words felt smoother, more natural. Chapter 3. Annotating and Vocabulary Notebooks. By day 2, Aria had filled 10 pages of her vocabulary notebook. She discovered that writing new words by hand helped cement their spelling and meaning in her mind. She organized entries into 3 columns: word, definition in English, and example sentence. For abstract words like resilience and perseverance, she drew quick sketches: a spring bouncing back and a climber scaling a mountain. To create visual associations, she also annotated the margins of her graded reader with synonyms and translations. turning each page into an interactive map of meaning. Whenever she encountered a recurring term, she added it to a digital flashcard app for spaced repetition practice. Chapter 4. Reading aloud and shadowing Aria's roommate, Miguel, was a native English speaker studying marine biology one afternoon, and she asked him to sit with her while she read aloud. As she struggled through a complex sentence, Miguel interjected gently, "Try to feel the rhythm. Read it like a poem." He demonstrated, emphasizing intonation and pausing at commas. Aria imitated his cadence, discovering that reading aloud not only improved pronunciation, but also enhanced comprehension. Later, she experimented with shadowing, playing a recorded audiobook version of her graded reader and repeating each sentence immediately after the narrator. This exercise trained her ear to recognize natural stress patterns, linking, and intonation, making written words come alive in spoken form. Chapter 5. Joining the reading circle. Word of Aria's commitment spread, and soon she received an invitation to join the Brighton English Reading Circle, a weekly meetup at the library. The group of 8 learners ranged from beginners to advanced, each bringing a favorite text, an article, poem, or short story to share. When it was Aria's turn, she presented an intermediate-level travel journal excerpt describing a train journey through the Swiss Alps. She read it aloud, paused to explain idioms like off the beaten track, and led a discussion on the author's use of sensory details. Fellow members offered feedback on pronunciation, suggested alternative translations, and asked follow-up questions that pushed Aria to clarify and elaborate. Through this supportive community, she gained confidence and discovered new reading strategies. Chapter 6. Exploring genres. By the 3rd week, Aria felt ready to venture beyond graded readers. She checked out a collection of short mysteries, drawn by the promise of suspense and surprise. In a detective story titled The Silent Witness, she encountered complex sentence structures and specialized vocabulary: forensic, alibi, incriminating. She tackled these words using context clues, hypothesizing meanings before consulting her dictionary. Sometimes she misguessed, thinking forensic meant for the public, but each mistake deepened her understanding. The thrill of solving the mystery motivated her to persist through challenging passages. After finishing the story, she summarized the plot in her notebook, then wrote her own alternate ending, blending creativity with comprehension. Chapter 7. Dual language texts and audio assistance. Eager to bridge the gap between reading and listening, Aria discovered dual language books that presented English text alongside her native Vietnamese translation. She started with a bilingual edition of classic fairy tales, reading the English on the left and the Vietnamese on the right allowed her to confirm meanings instantly, building trust in her comprehension. Simultaneously, she found audiobook recordings, For many of her books, listening while reading reinforced the connection between spelling and pronunciation. She often paused the audio to mimic the narrator's phrasing or to rewind and decode tricky passages. Over time, she noticed that she could predict the audio's next words before they were spoken, a clear sign of growing fluency. Chapter 8. Intensive reading projects to challenge herself. Aria embarked on an intensive reading project, summarizing daily news articles in English. She selected 2 articles each morning, one on world events, one on culture or science, and read them thoroughly. She highlighted key ideas, underlined unfamiliar terms, and wrote bullet point summaries in her notebook. Then she composed a brief report using linking words like however, therefore, and in contrast to structure her writing. She shared these reports with Miguel, who provided corrections and suggestions. This project sharpened her ability to read non-fiction, boosted her academic vocabulary, and kept her informed about current affairs. Chapter 9. Creative reading and writing midway. Through her journey, Aria decided to blend reading with creative writing. She chose a modern fantasy novel and began writing fan fiction, short scenes featuring beloved characters in new adventures. Writing in English forced her to pay attention to grammar, dialogue tags, and narrative flow. She relied on her growing vocabulary and consulted her notebook whenever she hesitated. After completing each scene, she posted it on an online forum for feedback. Native speakers praised her storytelling and corrected subtle errors, such as article usage and tense consistency. Through this process, Aria realized that writing about what she read reinforced her comprehension and solidified her command of language structures. Chapter 10. Skimming, Scanning, and Deep Reading. As Aria's skills advanced, she learned to tailor her reading strategy to her purpose. For pleasure reading, she practiced skimming, gliding over pages to capture general ideas. For research or language study, she scanned for specific information, names, dates, definitions, before diving into deep reading, where she examined every sentence, analyzed grammar, and reflected on author intent. She experimented with margin notes, color-coded highlights, and mind maps to visualize connections between ideas. These techniques made her reading more efficient and purposeful, transforming books from static texts into interactive experiences. Chapter 11. Technology as a reading companion. Aria embraced technology to enhance her reading. She used e-readers with built-in dictionaries, tapping on unknown words for instant definitions. She installed browser extensions that translated sentences on news websites and generated pronunciation guides. She joined online platforms like Goodreads to track her reading progress and discover recommendations. She experimented with text-to-speech apps that converted articles into spoken audio perfect for learning on the go. While technology offered convenience, Aria balanced it with traditional reading, pen in hand, so she wouldn't lose the tactile joy of turning paper pages. Chapter 12. Reading in Real Life. Aria extended her reading practice into everyday situations. She studied menus at restaurants, deciphering dish descriptions. She read signage on public transport, practiced reading street names, and even perused product labels at the grocery store. At the bank, she asked a teller to explain terms in her statement. Each real-world reading task became an opportunity to apply her skills and build confidence. When she encountered a phrase she couldn't pass, like subject to availability, she wrote it down and looked it up later, turning daily errands into mini lessons. Chapter 13. Sharing stories and teaching others. By the end of her 4th month, Aria felt transformed. She organized a community event at the library, inviting fellow learners to share book recommendations and reading tips. She prepared a slideshow in English, highlighting her journey from hesitant beginner to voracious reader. She led a workshop on how to annotate text, create vocabulary notebooks, and use dual language editions. Watching participants' eyes light up as they discovered new strategies filled her with pride. In teaching others, Aria deepened her own understanding and solidified her mastery. Chapter 14. The Final Challenge. For her capstone project, Aria chose to read and analyze a contemporary novel, something she would have deemed impossible at the start. She selected a best-selling mystery set in London. Over 6 weeks, she read a chapter a day, writing summaries, mapping character relationships, and researching cultural references. She discussed themes with an online book club, writing responses in English and fielding questions from native speakers. When she reached the final page, she felt a surge of accomplishment. She had read a full-length novel in English, understood its nuances, and engaged in critical discussion. Epilogue. A lifelong habit. As Aria closed the novel, she reflected on her journey. What began as a daunting challenge had blossomed into a lifelong habit. Reading English had opened doors to new ideas, friendships, and opportunities. She now devoured books of every genre, from history to poetry, always seeking the next page of discovery. Her vocabulary notebook, once a pristine blank slate, overflowed with words she had conquered, and in her heart she carried the certainty that, through reading, she would continue to learn, grow, and connect with the world, one page at a time.